Welcome to the Nova Podcast. I'm Jeff Counts, your guest host, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by Jason Hardink, not only featured pianist on this program, but the artistic director emeritus of the Chamber Music series. Welcome, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me.
It's good to see you. I know about the composer of this work, Sean Okpebholo, from you, which I could say about a lot of composers in my short history as a music person. How did you discover Sean? What was the introduction?
Through Facebook. I mean, Facebook gets a bad rap for a lot of deserved reasons, but
for sure.
There's some great things about being a musician alive today and the way in which you can connect with composers that you just couldn't, I don't know, even 20 years ago, right? So he was sort of suggested, we have a lot of mutual friends on Facebook in common, and so he was suggested, and I clicked on his profile as a composer, and I just started checking out his music, and was blown away instantly.
Let's talk about the piece for a second. Three different cultural perspectives on the Christian hymn. What was your way into this music? What did you do to did you study the source material? Do
you mean as a performer or just listening to it?
Both.
Yeah, I think ultimately one of the benefits of this whole change of lifestyle during the pandemic I'm an orchestra musician, was kind of used to that grind of like anywhere from 1 to 4 different programs a week, and I'm just listening to music differently now because our life is so changed.
Sure.
And I'm just more open and wanting to listen to what other people have to say. So I find that in an instance like this, that the immediate emotional response I had to his music is in a lot of ways more important to me than anything else. Just from like the first sounds of hearing his music and hearing this piece, I didn't need a way in anywhere but through here.
Sure.
But I don't think that's what you're asking me.
Well, I am curious about, look, I know your history. I know that you've studied Messiaen intensively, and I know that one of the things that Sean and Messiaen have in common, he'd probably be thrilled to be compared, but is that they're both people who come from a perspective of great faith.
Of course, yeah.
So that could certainly be said about music throughout history. That's not a new concept. But for me, not a very religious person, I usually find my way in through the rituals, through the readings, through the subject matter, which I find very interesting, and the writing is often very beautiful. And I know this 3 looks at the Christian hymn is a way in if you studied the source material, if you looked at the words. I know in one of the movements you actually have to vocalize a little bit and sing some of the words. So how did you find your way in as a performer to this piece?
It wasn't hard. I mean, I hate to be so reductive, but the piece is just so good. Yeah. I didn't have to think about it. I mean, like in the case of Messiaen, if you think about a movement like L'Esprit de Joie, the 10th movement of the Avant-Garde, like I played that movement before I wrote my dissertation and like studied the plain chant upon which the music is based, and that gave me a deeper understanding of the music, but it didn't change that emotional relationship I had with it. So I sort of just restating how important that seems to be to me these days. And I also find that once upon a time I had this aversion to like, if I thought I heard someone else's style, like Ives or Messiaen or Copland or whatever, in a living composer's music, I tended to be like, not dismissive, but like, I know where you got that idea. And I find myself letting go of that, which I think is very healthy for me. So I hear a lot of Ives in this piece, and I know that Ives is an important composer to Sean. And if there was a way in, maybe that's it for me. Yeah. Just that sort of Ivesian, like you think about the hazy qualities of the second movement, the way the hymn tune is sort of woven around like church bells and these sort of strange meandering lines with the pedal down, like echoing through a field. Or so, not really describing it very well, but it's that Ives sound, I think, that probably was my initial like, I know what this is, I know how to play Ives.
My big reveal for this interview was to tell you that I actually heard Ives in this music. No one will ever believe that I thought of that before you said it. It's forever lost to time, but I totally agree with you. I heard Concord Sonata in this piece. I know that when you can, you like to talk to composers that you're working with for the first time. So did you and Sean speak? What's the nature of the relationship?
We spoke. This is perhaps the quickest relationship sort of formed with the composer in that, I listened to a few of his spiritual arrangements and then his song cycle, Two Black Churches, and then I found the solo piano piece. Wrote him right away. This is all within like 20 minutes of clicking on his Facebook page.
Right.
Like, I need to get the score to this piece. So the solo piano piece, I practiced for about an hour that day, and I just had this like lightning bolt of, do I get to play this piece? Is it, just sort of going to the question of like, should white singers sing spirituals? And if what is that tune that the second movement is based on? And then if I have to sing and vocalize, if it's an old spiritual, then, maybe I'm crossing a line that, anyway, so I wrote him and I was sort of stammering out all these ideas and what colonialists did to Africa, and the first movement is based on these African rhythms and African sort of version of a hymn, and so Nigerian. So we had a Zoom a couple days after this email exchange to just talk it through, and he was so supportive and just amazing to, just meet up with a complete stranger and have this really frank discussion about race and society and politics and music and talking through this question of, I am the first white dude to play this piece, so really? I think it was actually an appropriate question to ask.
Maybe not even something he'd thought about before you brought it up.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I know because we've talked that this question is something that's occurring to you a lot, and I think it's probably having the sensitivity to these issues is probably influencing a lot of the composers you're seeking out these days. Can you talk a little bit about, I know that you're constantly on the lookout for new voices to interpret. Yeah. What kinds of things are you seeking out these days? Was finding Sean part of a larger goal of yours right now?
Well, like I said, the initial connection is random, a right. Facebook algorithm. Yeah. So I wasn't looking for him specifically. I didn't go through some database and stumble across his music there. But
I'm suggesting that Facebook might know the answer to this question I'm asking you.
Seriously. Yeah. Because, I feel like when it comes to the question of white supremacy in classical music and asking the fundamentals, I feel a little bit, I haven't gone to AA meetings or anything like that, but I honestly feel like asking myself the question, have I participated as a classical musician in white supremacy at any level by my repertoire choices? Sure. I'm sorry, the answer is yes.
Sure.
My repertoire hasn't been diverse enough, and I know that's, I guess I'm only interested in looking at the mirror because I can't turn my sort of gaze out at other organizations and get all judgy about what other people are doing. The important thing is to figure this out for myself first. And I just honestly feel like the structure of a lot of the way the classical music industry is sort of generates artists and promotes composers and musicians feels dismissive to people of color. And so what can we do about that? And I will tell you that I don't want to derail the conversation here, but with my own journey, I think I was maybe during when Black Lives Matter first started, starting to read Baldwin, Ta-Nehisi Coates, like, I need to educate myself. I don't read enough black authors, and I need to, I've got work to do.
Yeah.
But I still had that feeling. I feel like I'm in a confessional right now. You should be behind a
lightning would strike. Lightning would strike.
Because I didn't mean to go here, but I still had that feeling of society in America, but I'm powerless to do anything. And here I am, a pianist who plays music and loves playing music by living composers. I don't have to participate in this, having my solo repertoire be 99.9% dead white dudes, like classical pianists can sometimes do. Mm-hmm. I have the ability to, move beyond that. We all do.
Yeah.
But again, I'm looking inward when asking these questions. There was a great article that came out in 2019 by this composer, Anthony R. Green. It's titled, "What the Optics of New Music Say to Black Composers." And that's a great resource, I think, for any musician to just sort of, if you're asking this question, it's a great perspective from a Black composer about how things look and what feels right. Talking about, like, you know, is doing one concert with all African American composers during Black History Month for your series, is that the answer? You know, and really diving into those questions. I found that to be also just formative in my attitude of, like, him just asking the basic question of, like, or not asking, or just saying, yeah, there is something you can do. Play music by Black composers. Like, oh, yeah, I could do that. So this is a very long answer to your question.
No, it's important. I'm
obviously on my mind and has me kind of worked up these days, because I think when you see, I mean, white supremacy is talked a lot about in, you know, our surroundings, but I think the classical music world, you know, we're discussing it, but I think, like most things, we'll be a little slower to really adjust.
Slow to react does define our industry. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But I've appreciated this inward looking you've been doing, because I've been able to learn vicariously through the things you're discovering. So one of the things I appreciated about learning about Sean through you is that you always give me homework when we talk about composers. So let's give the listeners some homework with regards to Sean. Name 2 or 3 pieces of his that they can find easily online that they should be listening to get to know him a little bit better.
The first thing I would suggest is his arrangement of the spiritual "O Freedom." It's a great performance that was done at the Colburn School. I forget what the festival where it was performed, but get into YouTube.
Yep.
Sean Okpebholo, "O Freedom." This will pop right up. It's just like a 4-minute arrangement of a spiritual, voice and piano. Mind-blowing.
It's earth-shattering, there's no question.
And then if you have more time, his song cycle, "Two Black Churches," is a longer, maybe 17, 18-minute piece. The 2 churches that are being talked about, I believe, are the famous Birmingham bombing in the 60s, and then the more recent shooting, the Dylan Roof.
Yep. Right.
Point being that is an amazing journey, that piece. And that's really where I was listening to the piano writing and the way it interacts with the voice, and just thinking, tell me he has some solo piano music, because I just am in love with this music.
Well, I can say, having listened to those pieces, they are a great introduction to his music, and I think a really great primer to this piece that they're about to hear you play, which I know you've been on this journey. I've appreciated experiencing it vicariously through you, and I think you do this piece a great deal of justice. It's a wonderful performance. Thanks. And links to those pieces that Jason mentioned will be on the show notes for this podcast, so please, as I mentioned, do your homework and check this out. It's well worth your time. Jason, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the candor. Amazing conversation.
Thanks for having me.